You're listening to Soul Crush, a podcast dedicated to spirituality, sexuality, and sharing stories that inspire the soul. We release a podcast each new and full moon, devoting to healing the shame that binds us and illuminating the infinite possibilities and courage of the human spirit. Each episode, I will share a conversation with one of my soul crushes about the things that light our souls on fire and hardships that can crush our soul. I am your grateful host, Adriana Rizzola. Sit back, relax, and most of all, enjoy. On the first episode of Soul Crush, we'll be welcoming a dear friend of mine, a mentor of mine, Heidi Rose Robbins. Heidi's an astrologer, a poet, a transformational teacher. Heidi and I discuss everything from the divine feminine to the purpose of being with our pain, how to share our light more fully, tune into our soul's purpose, and how to live with the paradox that we are both infinite and in these temporary bodies. I'm so excited for you to come into this space, to be welcome, to feel heard and seen around all of the different aspects of being a human on the journey towards deeper love. Hello and welcome. This is episode 1 of Soul Crush. And I'm so grateful to have my first guest here, Heidi Rose Robbins. Hi, Heidi.
Hi, love. Yay, episode 1. So exciting.
Oh, I know. I'm so excited. So I'm going to begin just by reading Heidi's little bio. Heidi Rose Robbins is an esoteric astrologer, poet, podcaster, and leader of Radiant Life Retreats. As an astrologer, she has supported hundreds of men and women worldwide through major life transitions, spiritual crisis, and growth opportunities. Her podcast, The Radiance Project, combines her love of astrology, poetry, and good company. At her Radiant Life Retreats, Heidi helps women live more expressive and courageous lives through counsel, poetry, writing, and astrology. She has shared original poetry, some of it featured in her 2013 collection, This Beckoning Ceaseless Beauty, at 2 TEDx events in Los Angeles. She lives in Southern California with her husband and their 2 glorious, beautiful children. I'd add that in. So that's a little bit about Heidi, and then I'd love to just share a little bit of my just little introduction of Heidi. And when I was tuning in to what I wanted to share with you and things I wanted to, ask you today, I had this feeling and this insight of one of the things that Heidi really represents in my life is this woman of soul. There's something that Heidi embodies that I really had immediately from the first moment we met just like pulled me into my experience of my soul just by seeing the light that shines from her eyes. And I feel like my whole life I've kind of been cloaked in many ways with like low sense of self-worth, and that a lot of people that have entered my life have been like angels. Like I've really been reflected back the truth of my being as a light being, as even on the physical level, like an amazing woman through the people and what I feel are like angels that just have refused to let me believe that I was bad for too long. And Heidi has been like, oh, like I started crying when I was in the bathtub, like, you know, having these insights, because I was just like, oh, like she just has been such a beautiful, inspiring and strong woman in my life over these few years that I've been in Los Angeles, and is really part of the reason why I'm still here. And just her work I've seen her work just transform so many people's and women's lives in such deep and profound ways. And now, like daily, I feel like you, because of your amazing Instagram moon notes, it's like every day I'm like, there's Heidi just reminding us that we're so much more than what we think, you know, like this is what's happening, like all the, you know, we're so expansive and connected to so many things other than, you know, what we're thinking on our own in any given moment.
Well, can I just say that is so beautiful to be witnessed in that way. And just the moment that I met you, I was like, oh yes, you know, here's one that will never leave this, you know, my heart. Here's one that's in my heart forever. And it was immediate. So I, you know, I love you deeply, and I believe so much in the work that you're doing. And I'm so excited we get to have this conversation. And my little Aries self is very happy that we get to launch this together. The love of the new.
Yes. So start like right there where you just kind of like already entered into, it's almost it is your language. You like speak, you speak the stars. I mean, it's like, and in a way that I can absolutely receive it, even if I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, and which is how I love to learn. I love to like somebody to say something. I don't intellectually have any idea what they're talking about. My whole being just says yes. I know I learned it, and I can like move on to the next thing. Like I love learning in that way. You are such a teacher of that. You know, you are such a beautiful, beautiful teacher of like really grounding astrology into how we deeply accept ourselves and how we really come into more fearless places of shining our light. So I would love to hear where your journey began, which I know the story and I just want to hear it again because it's so good. And just, a little bit on just so our listeners can get a feel for how you approach it. I know oftentimes you talk about it as esoteric astrology and soul astrology. And, you know, I also experience it that way. So I'd love to hear just a little bit on that.
Well, I'll just say that, I mean, I do consider myself deeply blessed to have grown up in the way that I did from the get-go. You know, my father is a teacher of all things esoteric, and he is an astrologer, and he was already steeped in that when I was born, though he was directing operas. So he was already studying all of that. So, you know, I do have a little recording of myself singing the zodiac when I was 3, right? So it's been another language. And sometimes I have to like just laugh at myself because it seems like I can't make it through an hour without saying something astrological. I'm like, just shut up already. Like,
no, I love it.
You know, but it's true. And I did grow up in a house where we talked about the subtle world, and we talked about the spiritual life, and we talked about astrology. And on the other hand, my mother is a deeply grounded, you know, she's an architect. She was an architect. She's an artist. She's a woman of the earth, you know? And so I really did get to meet between the two of my father of the stars and my mother of the earth. And I think I've tried to walk the in-between path here, you know? So I would say when I was about 18 years old, I do remember saying to myself, oh, now I want to learn astrology. And it was a very specific moment. And my father, you know, made cassette tapes for me to learn the zodiac and learn astrology. And I also really started to study on my own. And since then, really, my life has been a dance of artistry and spirituality. And they're always weaving. And for me, when I do talk about the astrology that I practice, it is soul-centered astrology. And by that, I mean, we are all given these amazing maps of the moment that we were born. How do we want to use those maps? And hopefully we want to be generous with ourselves, like generous with ourselves with a capital S. And astrology really becomes soul-centered astrology when you're asking yourself, how can I give of myself? How can I give of myself to ignite the light in another? And it's by being fully who you are, and by completely owning and loving that. And of course we can't all do that like completely, but when we can take tiny gestures in that way, or so for me, soul-centered astrology is really about the generosity of the self and being able to say, this is who I am.
So beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like that experience, I've studied in my life with many, many teachers, and that the liberation that comes from fully being yourself is such a tricky, in my experience, it's like such a tricky game. At least from the yogic perspective as well, because from the yogic perspective and the spiritual perspective, there's this aspect of the ego that we're meant to in some way like demolish in some traditions and systems. Moving into more of like tantric philosophy, you're embracing that, all the aspects of the self as the path to liberation. And I just have found that using the stars and using your knowledge and learning from you in that way has really like opened up that door in a way that I never experienced with any other teacher, in such an easeful way of, like I said, this like direct transmission, because and that you can feel that you're also really living all of the things that you just said. And that's what I feel makes it so potent and so powerful.
Yeah, I would just say there's something that's so interesting just in our sun, moon, and rising sign. Like the sun is our personality, however flawed or quirky or broken or, tender. But all we have to agree to is to use the best aspects of our personality in service to the rising sign, which is the soul's calling, And I think maybe for you too, Adriana, it's interesting, like you're Aquarius rising, I'm Leo rising. So they're exact opposites. And so one hand, I'm saying, be your full radiant self. And you're saying, but the group is the self, which is the truth. The group is the self, at the highest level. But I think there's also something befuddling around, like, how can the group be the main thing, but how can I still step forward in my light, and that's the paradox for you. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Because I feel like in that expansive outward looking perspective, which offers so much, it offers for me as a teacher or as a leader, it really, it gives me this perspective that I feel is so just expansive, for others. And also I can be completely lost, where all of a sudden it's like, what am I even, who am I? Like what's going on? Who am I? Like only knowing who I am in reflection to someone else, was like a state that I was in for most of my life. And I feel like that's part of why what you're sharing of this, almost, it's like, yeah, this opposite in a way, although they're both, right, like these two sides of the same thing. It's like ultimately.
Yeah. And we are all honestly at this moment in time in the paradox and journey of Leo Aquarius, because we are entering the age of Aquarius, which is the age of the group, which is the age of democracy, which is the age of we are more together, we are all souls. And yet it's not and yet it's also our responsibility to fully give the highest gift of our individual soul self. So we empower the group soul and we give the highest gift of our individual self. And I'll go and do my Leo rising thing and be like, aha, there, I'm giving the gift. And then I'll suddenly be like, step back. And so, empower the group self. And I think we're all on that trajectory right now. And it's actually a gorgeous invitation for each of us.
Absolutely. Totally. And this whole shift, I feel like that is because I feel that those two also go hand in hand, this like full expression of the self very naturally, because I feel that it is our soul's journey and purpose to be of service to the world. Like I can't, I mean, at least I haven't come up with any other experiences that feel just as valid for, you know, being in a body at all, is to be of service. And so I feel like, you know, and that full, when we're in, and I know for me, when I'm in that moment of fully expressing what's really true for me, it just it doesn't even matter what I'm doing or what I'm talking about. I could be doing anything at all, and it feels like I'm giving of myself, like what you said, and I'm being of service in some way.
Well, I think you're a delicious example of exactly what you just described, in that there is a quality of the divine feminine in you that is so present to the flow of and the unfolding and the spontaneity and, you know, the moments of ease and the moments of chaos and the moments when you don't know, and you're willing to really ride that in a way that I think few are. At least you're willing to ride it consciously. I think, you know,
Oh
there's
Lord.
no, but it's true. It's true. I mean, you can have your mess, but but let's just say 85% of the time. But it's rare. I think it's rare.
What a ride it is.
And I guess I just mean, like, you know, you might sit out you know, you take some of your students out to a creek and you say, you know, let's put our feet in, let's weave a garland of flowers, let's whatever. And that is the deepest teaching, you know? And I sit them down. I'm like, I'm going to give you a lecture. Here we go.
I'm like, get in that creek with your clothes on or without your with all of your clothes on or with no clothes on. That's the option. You can choose either. And I'm going to sit here and support you as you bathe yourself in some fresh water. Totally. Yeah. No, I love that. And thank you for that reflection. Yeah. Your reflection always feels so good. And I want to get into your work with the divine feminine. And I just want to share one little bit about what we were just talking about around how, in my experience, your perspective and teaching with astrology really helps to cultivate a deeper sense of self-worth and a deeper sense of self-acceptance. Part of, you know, my intention with all of this is to really hold space for us to, even in this very moment, you know, open these conversations so we can all kind of shake a little bit more free from the confinement of our own, you know, the rejection of what that we can do sometimes to ourselves and that has been done to us that we carry. And I will give this example. And I love when I meet another Gemini moon, because I'm like, oh, I can't wait to tell you this. It's going to change your life. Literally. Or Gemini anything. I'm like, this will probably help you. But I had this amazing I've been on about 4 of Heidi's retreats, I think. I went once and then I was like, I'm going again. And then I was like, I'm going again. And I'm sure be on the next one. And it was after one of Heidi's retreats that she does, the Radiant Life retreats in Ojai. And I was, who knows where I was flying somewhere, and I had gotten to my destination, and I had gotten off the plane. I must have been out of the country because I had my passport. And I was about, you know, halfway out of the airport from the plane. And I just remembered all of a sudden, like, oh, I left my passport on the plane. And I've done this many times, or left my license on the plane, or left my, you know, sometimes nothing I needed to go back for, but the juice that I bought, you know, that I didn't drink. Anyway, something gets left on the plane oftentimes. And I turned around, I started walking, and I immediately felt that rush of like self-hatred, you know, or just that, like, you know, just that like self-anger. And I was like, and then all of a sudden I remembered, you're a Gemini moon. And then I was like, oh, and then I'm like, well, I think it's like, I kind of always do this. And, you know, like, it's usually whatever I lost is usually, if it's really important, I usually find it. And I've lost a lot of stuff that is really important that I never found also. And I've gotten over that. And so in that moment, I just was like I just felt myself very intuitively and instinctually take a deeper breath and just say, we're just going to walk back to the plane, me and you, old Gemini moon. Let's go see if the passport's still there. And if it's not, we're going to just take a couple more breaths and we're going to just like move on. Where, you know, and it seems like so silly, but it's so profound to me, because that's what spiritual practice is to me. Like, spiritual practice to me is like those moments where my heart closes, or those moments where I'm faced with this intense, you know, anger or self-hatred or, you know, judgment, whatever it may be that we all experience. And sure, imperfectly, but every moment that I am able to just have a new awareness around it, and can bring forth some compassion, like true compassion, not just like, oh, well, you know, you should love yourself in this moment. Because that kind of thing, it works for other people, but it doesn't work for me, because I can be like, that makes it worse, actually. Then my spiritual identity starts like attacking me on top of like the habitual Adriana identity that was already being attacked, you know?
Yeah.
And so it has to be an authentic arising of compassion for me to like really receive the medicine of it. And so I feel like I'm just so thankful and so grateful that I, you know, have been exposed to you, and that we've become friends, and that I've really learned so much, not just about me, but then I have that same compassion for others. It's not just about me. But as I saw all these different aspects on Heidi's retreats, you really get to see all these aspects of yourself embodied by other women, and you know, some of, like you said, some really gnarly, like from the gnarliest aspects of us to like the most beautiful free aspects of us. And seeing that and witnessing that is life-changing, because it lands in your cells in a different way from then on. When I see myself being a complete love addict, like, I'm gonna die if this moment passes and I don't talk to him, like literally. And like, there's a part of me that's like, okay, Venus and Pisces, like, why don't you take a bath and like cry a little bit, and then you're gonna feel so much love for yourself, because that's what's already there, you know? And it's just so cool, and it's just so profound, and it's life-changing. So
Well, I think I do feel like astrology is such a great tool for compassion, self-compassion, and compassion for others, because you see, you know, it's like if you see another woman embodying, you know, the most difficult aspect of Venus and Pisces, you suddenly are like, I'm not alone. Like, she understands, or she even possesses that, or she totally gets the journey that I'm on. So there's relief, there's compassion, there's a step before you have your innate reaction, you know, like, or your instinctual reaction. There's a moment of, wait a second, she's a Pisces moon. Wait a second. She's got, you know, Mars conjunct Saturn. Oh my God. You know, can you imagine that? You know, or whatever it is, you know? So it is a deep relief to have this as a language, and to feel it in your body. And it sets us free. It really does.
I love freedom.
Aquarius rising.
I just love freedom. So we got into it a little bit just now, but just your work with the divine feminine, and not just in women. I feel Heidi and I led a workshop that was open to men and women, and I felt in that moment where I was like, wow, like this, and I relate to a lot of the work that you do in this feminine way, but it also really like opened me to being like, yeah, this really isn't about gender in a certain way. It really is about this deeper thread. And I think even that in itself is healing, to even just contemplate, like, it's not even about gender, actually. It's about, I mean, I can go on and on for what it's about for me, but I also, in this moment, I want to hear, like, what is the divine feminine to you, and how do you, I guess I want to hear how it personally, like, what your personal relationship also is to the divine feminine.
I think I have to tell you this sort of story of just, well, let's just say I was raised with, my father in a very, in a way, masculine tradition, very cerebral, very much about study, very much about books that were gorgeous but dense and somewhat hard to understand, but also gorgeous texts that I wanted to study and still do study for my whole life, but a very masculine tradition. And then when I lived in Boulder, Colorado, I found myself, and this is now probably 20 years ago, at a yoga class that my friend Elizabeth Rayner and your friend Elizabeth Rayner took me to, and I met a woman who is now, my dear friend and teacher, and her name is Sophia Diaz, and I had such a deep bodily response to her freedom and to her feminine and to the capacity to, I think as she would say, outshine closure. And it was, her body was full of permission and full of invitation and there were a couple of moments that I'll just never forget. One of them was just, she was with all of us, and of course it's hard to communicate these things, but she was just, once she said, "I will gladly eat your troubles." I will gladly eat your troubles. And she meant every word of it. And there was another moment where something had happened within the group and she just began to cry. And I couldn't say why she was crying, but except that it was out of gratitude and it was out of the bliss of the moment. And it was out of this exquisite appreciation of the moment. And everyone, one by one began to cry because there was permission to be soft and present and yielding and open and invocatory and like celebrating the grace of the moment. And like, that was just mind blowing for me. So like, I think of the divine feminine has so many forms, and one of the forms that I feel is very comfortable in my being is the kind of great mama energy. I have Jupiter in Cancer, so this great mother protector energy. But I always have been drawn and felt so deliciously invited by the feminine that is the lover, the one that can appreciate all the senses, the one that like is in the moment of life, do you know? So my whole journey is about, with the divine feminine, is about exploring all the textures of love, all the textures, and steeping in all of those. And I'm a Capricorn moon. I'm like a planner. I create structure. I never forget things on planes. I'm like hyper aware of what's needed to contain things. And I think the divine feminine says, no, actually it's all about the birth of the moment and the birth of love and the grace that is as Sophia would say, there is a rain of grace forever coming down upon you. All you need to do is open your eyes and witness it and stand in it, So that was a very divine feminine way of answering that question.
Well, I'm with you. I followed you the whole way. And then some. Yeah.
And I would also just say, like, I'll just say this, it's never a linear path, of course. It is this gorgeous, mysterious, circular, detoured path, and full of the willingness to go as deep as you can possibly go, into the into the greatest pain, and to be able to live there and love there and cry there and surrender there, and then be able to breathe in replenishment only in the right timing.
So beautiful. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing all that. On your retreats, I mean, that happens. I mean, I just feel like even the permission to cry, I mean, it's just so amazing to me that still, like, we feel like crying. Like, if I'm crying, I'm like on top of the world. It doesn't matter if it's like for a good reason, for a bad reason. Like, literally for me, crying, and maybe for many years of my life, I repressed so many emotions that I just feel like that permission to cry, it just softens you no matter what. And in that softened state, like what you shared so beautifully, and what Sophia said about, they love that about the grace, raining down no matter what. And it's like, how soft can we be to receive that power, and the power in softness, I feel like it's so profound. I mean, it's so indescribable in words, in my experience. So this will be a good time to read one of your poems, which I'm going to do. Because I feel like, that's part of why I want to share in this way, is that, poems and music and, the ways that we move our bodies and the ways that we listen to one another, like that's where I oftentimes find, and in the tears and what you just said, that's where that deep releasing into receiving that power of any given moment that is there, is such a gift.
And just I want to say one more thing, which is that you've experienced this multiple times. I've experienced this multiple times. When one woman in a circle begins to shed authentic tears, the whole circle is softened. And that is the interdependence of the feminine. That is the way in which we are all of one organism, where one woman's willingness to dive, or one woman's willingness to shed, results in the entire group dropping down deeper, 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 deeper.
Absolutely. And into that space where judgment just like it's just like not even on that planet. There's like no conversation about judgment on that planet. When we move into that space, it's just like, it just dissolves. It just doesn't, it's just not there. And I feel like it's something that you personally also really hold a very strong space for. And I think something that requires either, I don't know what it takes to be able to hold that kind of space, a little bit of karma probably, and a lot of like your own just truth seeking and practice, spiritual practice. But on your retreats, I was reflecting on how, in one instance, we can be holding a woman that's like going through, the most heart-wrenching breakup or divorce or grief, or, and then in the next moment, literally celebrating on the highest level of joy, a new birth that's coming, a pregnancy, where that is just like a very freaking rare thing. Like that is something that, and I know from my years of working with women, is to be able to hold that, and even if some of us in the room are like, I don't know if I can hold that, like, you don't have to, because someone else next to you is. And by witnessing that woman being able to hold that extreme joy next to the depth of that heartbreak, the loss and then the birth, literally in the matter of like 15 minutes or half an hour, is like, that's what expands our capacity to be open to this world in this broken way, and still, like you said, be able to show up and to serve one another, or be able to show up for ourselves in the ways that we need to. And that takes, it's a learning, it's a skill, I believe. And I feel, at least at this point in our evolution, it's a skill that we're learning how to do.
Yeah, it's a practice. It's a practice that, I mean, you know, now I've done something like 18 or 19 retreats, right? And so we just keep showing up. We just keep showing up and being willing to experiment and support one another and switch gear and find divine time, the right timings for things. Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I could squeeze you. I wish I could give you like a
No,
little mid.
I feel a virtual squeeze.
Let's just take a moment to like do an energetic hug.
Received.
Okay. So I'm going to read one of your poems, one of my favorite poems of yours. You have many, many beautiful poems, and one of the most transformative things that just hearing Heidi read a poem is like, it's just so good. It's so, so good and so healing. Just your presence, your love for poetry comes through the way that you share it. And it's so beautiful and it's so healing. And I love poetry so much as well. And I feel like I said, a lot of the things that we are after, I think, as humans on paths of, you know, conscious living are just things that are not articulated and just in the common way. You know, they oftentimes come through in these other ways of poetry and song and sharing in this way. So this poem is called, do you want to guess actually? Do you want to
I don't want to guess.
Okay, great.
I'll tell you if go ahead.
Okay, cool. So this poem by Heidi Rose is called Wild Compassion.
I knew it.
See?
I should have guessed.
You should have. Well, now you know for next time. You're probably right. Wild compassion. You know the days when you're better left alone. And if you happen to be in a dark corner, in a dark room, all the better for you and everyone else. The days when not even sugar or a stiff drink or your drug of choice makes a shred of difference in the landscape of sorrow. Is it rage or fear? Whatever your flavor of closing down, curling up, slamming shut, however you refuse to shift, deny the light that just wants to cast a splash of hope across your cheek. You know the days when all you do is sit and stare, can't move your face to anything but slack. Black everywhere, lack of hope, money, motivation, mojo. Doesn't matter how far I've traveled down any spiritual path, equanimity, poise, objectivity, flung out the window at dawn. This life is a ride, people. Anyone who preaches from a pulpit and refuses to acknowledge the unstoppable raging current is not to be trusted. The ones to listen to have a wild compassion in their eyes that comes from riding that current on a makeshift raft crafted from loss and resurrection. Best thing to do with a day like this, as far as I can tell, is muster up a nod to it, a generous nod to the stranger walking from parts unknown. If you can find the words or even just lift your head, invite him in for a coffee black. Ask him why he's come, what he hopes to find here in this wild, wild wilderness. Listen up, he'll mumble, shed a tear. He won't make any sense. Listen closely. Say your farewells and watch him walk into a fiery sunset. Watch him burn at the center, swallowed by the flames. Lay your head on your pillow and exhale. Give it away, the stranger, your day, all of it. Die into the darkness that will swallow your pain with its fierce love. Set down your honorable load. Then trust this. Morning light will touch your cheek. Your need only to turn ever so slightly toward it.
So beautiful to hear you read it.
I feel like, I love the die into darkness that will swallow your pain with its fierce love. And I feel like part of the feminine is this ability to really, to do that exactly, to to be open to the darkness as something that is actually some of the most potent medicine that we have to transform and to heal. And did you want to say something?
No, no, I go, please continue. I'm was like nodding and yes.
Yeah. No, totally. I thought you were saying. And you know, one of the things I want to ask you to share more of is just this time that we're in of really expansion and evolving, you know, so quickly, it feels like, as humans. And I feel that the shadows can't really hide out so much in this moment in the closets that they used to. At least I think that's pretty obvious in our society, in our culture right now. But just on a personal level, I feel like that's true for myself and many people I work with. And I feel like part of those shadows coming out, and part of the integration of that, is truly to be able to hold a greater space of love. And I just would love to hear, you know, from an astrological perspective and from, you know, your own personal view around, you know, what the heck is happening in this moment around, you know, sexuality and shame and, you know, all these things that are coming out, all these skeletons that are coming out of the closet, and why, I would say, if you have any insight on that.
Yeah, well, you know, you and I did this workshop on Jupiter and Scorpio, and this is the theme of the entire year from October of 2017 to October, November of this year. And this only happens once every 12 years. And Jupiter is the great planet of beneficence and opportunity and blessing. And so you could really think of Jupiter as in Scorpio as shining a light into the closet, into the darkness, into the depths of ourselves. And on one hand, it's bringing all the fear and all the shame and all the like wobbly broken parts. And also too, I just had this amazing discussion with Tisha Morris, who's a feng shui woman. And also too, it's shining the light on all the things that are in our closet that are wanting light, that are actually precious, that are actually yearnings, that are actually longings, you know, that have been hidden away. So it is a full-on outing of everything in our society that has been repressed or sat on or ignored or abandoned. And it's a full out outing within ourselves. So if ever there was a time of heal or heal thyself, you know, I feel like we have to approach it from two ways. I feel like we have to work with the broken parts. I mean, I'll speak for ourselves, like work with the part that's like, oh, I have a terrible way of beating myself up, you know, the names I call myself, you know, every day, 100 times a day, you know. And so we have to address that like on a minute and practical way every day. Like, how do we stop ourselves and replace it with something? How do we grow quiet so that, you know, how do we do yoga so that some of that dims, you know? But we have to act from that position, but we also have to sound the highest note, you know, because everything gets absorbed into the highest note. So, I mean, I always think about the way that when my own podcast, the Radiance podcast, got started, which was like, I was really sick, physically sick. And yet I knew that for the next chapter of my life, I had to sound a note of like what I want to become, what I want to work on, what do I want to share, to go back to what we were saying, what do I want to sound forth? And radiance is a theme for me. So did I ignore my health? No, I took care of it. But did I consistently sound this other note? Yes. And do I think that actually did some more good? I actually do. I actually think, you know, I want, you know, whatever it is, I am love. I stand in love. I am the soul. There's a beautiful mantra that comes from the Alice Bailey books, and it just says, I am the soul and also love. I am. And that's how it begins, you know? So just the affirmation of that. And then it's at one point in the mantra, it just says, my will is now to lift the lower self into the light divine. So just like I'm in my imagination, in my breath, in my being, I'm just going to take this self that is in pain, and I'm going to lift her into the light divine. And do you know, I mean, these, so just to say, yes, astrologically, you better believe we are in a time of cleaning out and clearing up and facing our fears, and hallelujah, we're opening the closet doors, and we're going to be better for it. And we're going to be stronger for it, because Scorpio is the warrior. So we are going to be warriors of light. That's what we're headed for by the end of this year, as you know, a step along the way.
So powerful.
Yeah. I just feel like we have to be so tender and kind with ourselves, and as much as possible with everyone we meet, because we really are all navigating a very difficult time in history. And it requires patience.
I feel like it's difficult in a completely new way. That I think one is what makes it so challenging. It's like when we look back for the support of, you know, the sages and the saints and the mystics and the masters that have walked before us, you know, they've paved this path and this way. But as humans, as we continue to evolve and as the world continues to evolve, there's so many, you know, different challenges. You know, we're not dealing with necessarily physical, you know, I mean, some of the greatest saints and mystics, you know, that I love so much, it's like they were just constantly sick. You know, they lived in a time where there wasn't even medicine, and they were just like, their bodies were constantly suffering. So their journey of like lifting that one and still being grateful to grace, that was, you know, this like whole physical, it's like, forget it. It was just like, I have to, you know, be in this, and I'm still grateful, you know, to be alive. And I feel like we are kind of, you know, working with, oftentimes, obviously we have physical bodies. So naturally we also face a lot of those challenges as well. Like what you were sharing. I love that. And that's like, I feel like that's the work of the great mystic, is to, whatever the challenge is, you know, despite the challenge and with the challenge, you know, with the part of us that is challenged. And because of that that's how we become these warriors of love and these warriors of light. Like you're saying, you know?
Yeah. Actually, Adriana, can I read a poem that is not my own?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I have this like new soul crush on this woman, this poet that Laura Pinney, who we both
amazing.
my God, introduced me to.
I'm so glad that you're bringing all of these things up, because I was going to ask you, well, I'll ask you again later, but one of your soul crushes are, but also, just to share a poem. And Laura Pinney is one of my favorite women ever. She's just so amazing. She'll be
she's love. And she has a way of quietly putting something in front of me that's like, you might want to read this, you know, and then it opens a whole world. And I'm actually at this very sweet spot with this poet, because it's like this world of discovery where sometimes when you open a poetry book, you think, I'm lucky if I find one poem that I resonate with. Like that's just the way it is for me. And I think for many people, because poetry is so deeply personal and piercing, and to find one is extraordinary. Anyway, this woman is named Jan Richardson. She's a minister, she's a poet, she's a painter. And she got married, like, I think now, something like 8 years ago, but then her husband died suddenly after just 4 years of marriage. And she wrote this book called The Cure for Sorrow, a book of blessings for times of grief. And they're all blessings, and they're just extraordinary. And she actually has a whole bunch of books, but this really feels like what we were just talking about. And it's called Blessing for the Brokenhearted.
Mm.
And she's got a quote by Henry David Thoreau underneath that says, "There is no remedy for love but to love more."
Mm.
Let us agree for now that we will not say the breaking makes us stronger, or that it is better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps for now, it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made precisely for this, as if it knows the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still, as if it trusts that its own persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom, but will save us nonetheless.
Mm.
Yeah, she's extraordinary. She's extraordinary.
That part where she says that as if this was what the heart was made for. I don't remember exactly the line, but
Yeah.
you know, like it's oof, so good.
Yeah. Blessing for the brokenhearted. I mean, I think, I think we can't, I think another thing about this time is we can no longer put on a brave face. We can step into our strength,
Mm.
and we can feel how we are connected to all that is, but we can't repress or hide the pain. Like the pain has to be held by all of us and spoken about by all of us, and we have to tend one another's pain and grow one another. And I mean, that's the deepest beauty for me about working in any circle of women or working, just deep friendships, is like to tend one another, to grow one another, to sprinkle the water of nourishment on one another, to remind one another of a beautiful moment that relieves us of a certain burden we're carrying.
Absolutely. And even when that burden is the feeling of, in a moment of heartbreak or, which I feel like that poem just so beautifully articulated, of the feeling of needing to be something that we're not, like this feeling of being heartbroken, but I know this happened for a reason, or, like this jump to, that we, I think, naturally want to do, because in some way it feels like it'll take us out of the pain. And, to really hold one another in those moments, I feel like that's where that very potent alchemical thing happens, where that pain just turns into love. And, that I think, I know that you've helped me learn so much. And also what we're really all helping each other with in this time is to be held in that, is to be held in that broken open heart.
Yeah. So beautifully said. Yeah, absolutely.
Even in the
Mad
madness.
world. Yeah.
Mad world. The world has always been mad, I think. So I'm grateful for good friends like you. And grateful for the opportunity to just to share and to be together in this way that, deeply recognizes our human, predicaments, and also deeply recognizes that, the mystery of, all of the unknown of it. And what you just said of helping really hold and help grow one another. I loved the way you said that, to like really help grow one another, because it really does. It does feel like that. That kind of tending is so crucial to our human hearts, that I feel are the most, they're the most sacred thing that there is, I feel, in our experience. So thank you for all of the beautiful work that you do, and just for being such such a profound light in the world. And for being such a massive embodiment of joy and of, just really like unstoppable, unstoppable light. Like I feel that in you so strongly, and willingness. I feel like your willingness to be seen, also on the receiving end of being a teacher and being a leader, you also are so open to receive. Even when you're in the facilitation seat, I think that's really powerful to be able to also be open and vulnerable about who you are and where you're at. And yeah, it's just, you're an amazing love warrior and amazing woman.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel all those things about you, my love. So thank
Good.
you, though. Thank you deeply.
Yeah. So I would love to hear, and then we'll close with a short guided meditation. But any other people or beings that, your soul is just like, really excited about in this moment, or that you would like to share with us that we can, tune into?
Gosh, it's so funny. The beauty is, and I think you'll relate to this. It's like, I can fall in love every day. Like, like I can, like, this person right now is perfect. I just want to soak in it, but for sure in an ongoing way, Sophia Diaz has been my soul crush.
Yeah.
And this new woman, Jan Richardson, is like, I love always having somebody that is a mystery to me that I want to discover and uncover. And I want to think of, it's so funny. I want to think of like a musician, because for me, music is it makes me laugh. I never listen to enough music. And the minute I really listen to music that cracks me open, I just feel entirely different, So like, Joni Mitchell's A Case of You, like the minute something like that comes on, my whole body cellularly changes, So like, to the musicians, my gigantic soul crush.
Yes. Love that.
Yeah. And you, baby, from the moment I met you, I was like, she's my soul crush.
Yes. I felt the same thing. And just your whole manifestation of your creative life. I met Heidi when she was holding this beautiful event in her home, in her yard. It was called an event called Backyard Illumination. And there were some people sharing poetry. There are some people just sharing about their work and that they were really inspired about, putting out into the world. And I just remember sitting there and not having a ton of connections in Los Angeles yet, and kind of feeling like, oh man, I don't know. Like, I don't know if anybody here speaks my language. And I really was just like, whoa, this is, this kind of creative energy is the thing that keeps me going. And it's the thing that, uplifts and draws out the best of me. And so I immediately also was like, what is this? And who is this woman? And how do I get closer to her? And, how do we make this happen? And it's just been such a natural and beautiful unfoldment of so much goodness. So
trusting the synchronicities, trusting that any day you could wake up and be invited to a backyard illumination.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what we have to trust when we wake up feeling gray and gloomy. Is like, who knows what will happen today?
Absolutely. It's so true. Or what song will come on, or, what person will knock on your door and sing you a song, which is something that happened to me right before this podcast. So I'd love to just take a few minutes and close our eyes together. So if you're listening, you're also welcome to find a comfortable seat and close your eyes, unless you're driving, which I listen to many podcasts driving. So if you're driving, you can just kind of sort of halfway tune in and revel in all of this connection that we share between you and I, Heidi, and between all of the people that are listening. This really powerful human connection that we share on a subtle level, and the energy that we're always sharing on this subtle level, this energy of love, this energy of the soul. If you're in a place where you were able to close your eyes and just start to relax through your jaw, relax through your legs, relax your hands, and just let your outer physical form soften into that almost gooey and fluid inner being, that part of you inside that's always flowing, that's always moving in response to what is being presented. And just take a couple of deeper breaths right into your throat. And as you breathe into your throat, just honoring your ability to create, to share, to dream, to heal yourself, to be an open vessel for love. And you can let yourself rest just a little bit deeper for this last part, just sinking right down into that power and that beauty of the soul that's within you. And you can take a moment and just draw anybody into this field of love that is in your life that you know could use it, or even other beings in different parts of the world or groups of people that you want to share this energy of love with, this prayer, this moment of connection and prayer. Just to send that energy out to all beings that could be suffering in this moment, all parts of us that are suffering in this moment. In the same way that our bodies need food, our souls need love. And it's really the only thing that they do. Your soul just loves. Like Heidi was just sharing at the end, just, you know, you could fall in love with all day long if we tune our awareness in that way where that energy is present. So just take a breath and just draw that love all the way back into your own body. And you can start to just let the corners of your mouth lift up and feel the energy of a smile across your face. And when you feel ready, you can gently move your body and let your eyes open. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you. That was a delicious hour.
So make sure that you go listen to all of Heidi's episodes on the Radiance Project, because it's just such an amazing podcast. I've listened to almost all of them, and it's just full of really beautiful poetry, and you'll learn so much about astrology just by listening and tuning in to all the amazing people she has and all of her wisdom that just flows through. And you can find Heidi at HeidiRoseRobbins.com, and on Instagram.
Same, at Heidi Rose Robbins.
Heidi Rose Robbins on Instagram. check out and follow her. And she posts like I said, every day. She, at least for now, I don't want to pin her into some box of having to do anything that she doesn't want to do. But for now, she's gracing us with a daily moon report, which is so helpful. And people are really getting so much benefit out of it. I know everybody that I know that is, I tell everybody and they're like, oh my gosh, thank you. It's it really changes our perspective right from the start. So, and yeah, her next retreat is going to be in October. Do you have the dates?
I don't yet. It's actually going to be in a new location for the first time in 7 years. So we're still locking that in, but I will let everyone know soon.
Amazing. So yeah, check it out. Love and just so much gratitude for all of your hearts, and sending lots of blessings and peace to your day or your evening. And that wraps up our first episode of Soul Crush. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, and please share a rating and share your thoughts and insights. And you can follow me at Art of Loving, and I'll be posting each new and full moon a new guest, some new insights, and we'll always be closing these sessions meditating on the soul. May we all come to know the freedom, the beauty, and the love that is the truth of who and what we are.